The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has called on the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy to consider a ceasefire with Russia. Orban was speaking during a surprise trip to Kyiv, his first since Russia's full-scale invasion, and one that comes a day after Hungary assumed the EU's rotating presidency. Zelenskyy, for his part, said Ukraine needed a just peace and called for Europe to keep up military aid to his country. Now, Orban has been one of Europe's most pro-Russia leaders and has opposed more aid for Kyiv. He had this advice for his host.
I asked the Ukrainian president to think about whether we could reverse the order, to speed up peace talks by making a ceasefire first. A ceasefire connected to a deadline would create an opportunity to speed up peace talks. I explored this possibility with the president, and I'm grateful for his honest answers and negotiation.
And we can get more from our correspondent in Ukraine, Nick Connolly. Nick, tell us how Orban's suggestion went down in Kyiv.
You can imagine, Anya, that the suggestions went down like a lead balloon with his hosts. It was to be expected. This is a leader that Ukraine has had very difficult relations with. It's his first visit to Ukraine for more than a decade. Not only has he not visited during the full-scale invasion since 2022, but he wasn't there before. The last Ukrainian president he met with was Viktor Yanukovych, that pro-Russian leader who fled to Russia as the result of protests here in Ukraine. And there's been lots of bilateral issues about the Hungarian minority in Ukraine. But since the war began, he said lots of things that really people have not liked in Ukraine, saying that Ukraine is basically not a sovereign state anymore, that it's basically a puppet of the Western donor countries supporting this country's military and its finances. He has said that NATO shouldn't look to see Ukraine win, that is just not going to happen. So this was a visit that was expected with a lot of trepidation, and now you could see Volodymyr Zelenskyy basically focusing on the fact that Hungary had been behind those Ukrainian efforts in the Swiss summit, the kind of Ukrainian peace plan, and basically trying to ignore as much as he could all those words from Viktor Orban, that idea of a quick ceasefire, just basically draw a line in the sand where those troops are right now and then see where it goes. That is not something that Volodymyr Zelenskyy has ever raised and potentially could raise given the kind of political situation. So I think this was a question of having to accept Viktor Orban now, his country with the rotating EU presidency. It's a visit of courtesy and trying to basically limit the damage. That is as best as Volodymyr Zelenskyy could hope to achieve from this visit today.
OK. What about ordinary Ukrainians? I mean, would they accept a ceasefire on these terms?
When you speak to people here, they will admit that they're tired. They will admit that lots of people are scared of going to the military or have known people who've been wounded or even killed. But when you ask them, are you willing to organise a ceasefire to basically just let it stay as it is, they'll tell you as soon as that ceasefire comes into effect, Western countries will think, OK, this is now over. We don't have to support Ukraine militarily, financially, and will basically forget about Ukraine or draw down on their support to such a level that in a year, 2, 3, Russia, having rebuilt its military, can come back again and get the remainder of the country. There is a deep conviction amongst people here that Vladimir Putin is not intent on just leaving it as things are, taking off a few regions, that he wants to control this country in its entirety. And so they do not believe that by giving Russia a chance to rebuild and the West a chance to distract itself, that that would actually achieve anything and give them long-term security.
Nick, thanks so much for that. That's DW's Nick Connolly. And we can cross straight to our Brussels correspondent, Bernd Riegert, for more on this. Good to see you, Bernd. What exactly is Orban's message here? What does he mean by a quick ceasefire?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Quick ceasefire can only mean that Ukraine gives in to the demands from the aggressor Russia, so that Russia would further occupy stretches of Ukraine and also the Crimea Peninsula. A quick ceasefire should, in Orban's view, lead to peace talks with Russia. And he's certainly speaking not on behalf of the whole EU, not as an EU president, because this is not the common agreement or the common position of the EU. So Orban is mostly talking for himself, and we have to see also how this goes down in Brussels.
OK, and what about Volodymyr Zelensky's reaction to this suggestion?
Well, Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, replied that Ukraine needs a just peace. That means that Russia has to withdraw from the occupied territories and also from Crimea. And this is actually, if you see that, a long way to go still. So these two guys, Orban and Zelenskyy, are not on the same page. And also Zelenskyy said that he needs more and sustainable support from the EU for the foreseeable future. And this is also something Mr. Orban is trying to block and to water down as much as he can in the last months. So also in here, there's still a huge disagreement.
So a clear rejection from Zelenskyy. This is Orban's first visit to Kyiv, isn't it, since the war started? It comes just a day after Hungary took over the European Union presidency. So should this visit be seen as a diplomatic gesture, or do you think something concrete could actually come out of these talks?
Well, first of all, it's really a diplomatic gesture because Orban shows that he is willing to engage now, to talk to Zelenskyy, at least in person, something he hasn't done for years. But we don't see that Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, actually changes his position. He is very close affiliated with Russia. He's doing business with Russia. He's getting gas from Russia. He's building a nuclear plant together with Russia in Hungary. He did not say that he would alter his position. And as I said, he's the only one in the EU who's blocking the efforts to help Ukraine more. And he's the only one also in NATO who's not participating in a military aid package. So we have to see if these words actually follow action.
Bernd, thank you. That's DW's Bernd Riegert reporting from Brussels.